Hey everyone, how's it going? Matthew Bailey here, and welcome to another rankings video or top things video. And as I promised in my best films of the 2010 decade video, we are now finally at my top 10 best films of 2020. Yep, this is the first time I've done this video now, and like I said, oh, sorry, my cat just appeared next to me. But yeah, this is my film for my video for the top 10 best films of 2020. Now, before I get into it, the main 10, I want to give a shout out to two honorable mentions. Yep, I said two. And those honorable mentions are Bill and Ted Face the Music. And even though this came out right around Christmas, We Can Be Heroes, a Netflix film that is actually by the same director who did the Spy Kids films. But this movie is kind of like a so-called sequel to The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, which is the one movie by Robert Rodriguez that I did not enjoy. But this movie was actually a little bit better when it comes to quality, animation, or at least special effects, when it comes to those two characters, Shark Boy and Lava Girl, because they did appear in this film. Even though it's not technically a sequel, most people consider it a sequel because those two characters showed up in it. But you gotta wonder, it kind of seems like it would be a sequel to the Spy Kids films as well, because the so-called president of the United States, who showed up in Spy Kids 2, also shows up in this film. But anyways, yep, those are my picks for the two honorable mentions that were released in the year 2020. But now we're going to get into my list for the main top 10 movies of 2020. Yep, at number 10, I have another Netflix movie called Over the Moon. Yep, this movie was again released on Netflix, and just like We Can Be Heroes. But the reason why I thought this Netflix movie did a little bit better than We Can Be Heroes is because, like I said, the animation, it is an animated film, like totally animated, no live action characters whatsoever. And I gotta say, the story it told in the movie was kind of cool. I mean, for real, like, you have a young girl who misses her mother, who used to tell her stories about the moon goddess, who, or about a woman, I forgot the name of her character, but she did not get a chance to stay with her lover, and they basically, she tried so hard to find her lost love, and this girl and her so-called brother, or stepbrother, I guess, go on this journey where they discover she's real, and they learn a lot of lessons along the way. I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole details. All I can say is that this movie, being animated, being released on Netflix, it was a pretty decent film. Like I said, it was good enough to make the top 10 best films of 2020, mostly because a lot of movies got pushed to this year, in 2021, which I'm not sure if I'm going to make a video talking about my most anticipated films of this year, but I'll see about that. But for number 10, I have Over the Moon. So, at number 9, I have a movie that's based on a true story known as I Still Believe. Yep, this movie actually came out right the month before Regal Theaters and a bunch of other theaters shut down for a little bit, and I took a break from my job at Regal Cinemas. But the movie's called I Still Believe. It's based off of a true story regarding a famous young musician who falls in love with a girl, and the way he wrote his songs were based off of his one true love, and how she unfortunately passed away, and because of some type of cancer, but he never gave up. He still believed he could save her. And I have to admit, it was a pretty great movie when it came, because like I said, when are true story movies not great? I mean, if y'all remember, back in 2019, my favorite film of 2019 was actually a true story movie. And that was called Harriet. And that was based off of the true story of Harriet Tubman and how she escaped slavery on her road to freedom. But this movie was kind of the same. I still believe it's basically a movie that truly touches the hearts of young people, especially who want to be musicians, like this man or boy who was in the movie. And he's still, I think he's still living it up, you know? But he still never forgot the time when he lost the one he truly loves, and the one who his songs is based off of. But I have to admit, like I said, I originally did not get to see this movie when it came out in the theater. I actually had to see it when it came out on DVD, but it was worth the wait, because I think I would have preferred just to see it at my own home. But I still think it was a great movie. So for number 9, I gotta go with I Still Believe. Yep. At number 8, I have The Call of the Wild. Yep, this is the very first movie, aside from Star Wars and Indiana Jones, that I saw Harrison Ford in. And boy, oh boy, he was a great actor when it came to this movie. I have to admit, this is a movie that I really wasn't and did not have on my anticipated list. But I gotta say, I was actually pretty surprised that this movie turned out to be a decent, good film. And you look at other films that are out in the world that are similar to the story of this movie, like, I can't think of the names of some of them, but I know that there are movies that are based off of an animal and a human that really touched the hearts of a bunch of people, but this movie, Call of the Wild, was a decent film, especially because it had Harrison Ford in it. But I cannot wait to see how his career goes after the Call of the Wild. I mean, I do know that he is hoping to finish off his career with the final installment to the Indiana Jones franchise with Indiana Jones 5. We don't know if there's a subtitle for it, but we're finally going to possibly see that movie, I think, next year. So you won't see my review of Indiana Jones 5 until at least towards the end of 2022. I'm not 100% sure when it actually comes out, but yeah, The Call of the Wild was a pretty decent film, and I have to admit, even though 2020 did turn out to be a not so great year because of a certain pandemic that I do not want to talk about, I still think 2020 was a decent year for movies, whether that be in theaters or on streaming services. But for number 8, I gotta go with The Call of the Wild. Yep. At number 7, I actually have Birds of Prey. This is actually a movie that I went to see with my good YouTube friend Matthew Davis Media. The link to his channel will be in the description below. And I have to admit, I was pretty skeptical about seeing this movie, especially after I went to see the movie Joker with him the year before that, in October. And I actually thought that movie was pretty good, and it turns out Joker was in my top 5 movies of 2019. Even though there was a top 15 list in 2019, it was actually in the top 5 of the 15. And this movie, even though it's based on the same type of characters in that universe, and this time featuring Harley Quinn, I did enjoy it. I have to admit, it was a pretty good movie. However, with recent events that have been going on regarding the actress herself, not specifically her, but the fact that I've been hearing rumors that a certain other actress that I do not want to talk about is trying to convince her to help her in her so-called rise to fame And if you're wondering which actress I'm talking about, there will probably be a picture of her that shows up on the screen. This actress is trying to convince Margot Robbie to help her in her so-called rise to fame, and plus the only real movie she was ever really famous in was Aquaman, and I feel like ever since that movie came out, she thinks she's the big star of the movie when she's not. It's actually Jason Momoa, but I still think that Birds of Prey was a decent film. It wasn't that bad, and like I said, I saw it with my friend Matthew Davis, and I mean there were a few movies that there was like 3 movies in total this year that I went to see with him in the theaters for sure. There was Birds of Prey, there was a movie that was on my worst films, which was Bloodshot, and the next movie that's on this list, I actually also went to see with my good friend Matthew Davis right before theaters shut down. Yep, at number 6, I have Onward. That's right, this is, again, the third and final movie that, or not final, but this was the third movie that I went to see out of the 3 I saw with Matthew Davis Media. It's a Disney Pixar film. It's actually a Disney Pixar original film, because if you remember, for the last few years, all we've been mostly getting is sequels to certain movies, like Finding Dory in 2016. We got The Incredibles 2 in 2018. We got Cars 3 in 2017. The only original film we've gotten before Onward in the last few years was, since 2015, were Inside Out and Coco. I think those are the only movies that are by Pixar that we actually got that were originals. All the other movies are like I said, you had Finding Dory, you had Cars 3, you had The Incredibles 2, a bunch of sequels. And now even this year we're supposed to get more Disney original films like Luca and shoot, I forgot the name of the other one that's supposed to come out this year, but I know there's 2 Disney Pixar films that are coming out. One is Luca, and I can't remember what the other one is, but if you know what the other movie is, let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, Onward was actually a pretty decent film. It starred Tom Holland, aka Spider-Man in the MCU, and Chris Pratt, aka Star-Lord from the Guardians of the Galaxy. I actually think it was a pretty decent movie, but not as great as the main other Disney Pixar movie that's on this list. So now we're in the top 5, and as you can see, I have Scoob at number 5. That's right, the first official animated film that was supposed to get released in theaters or whatever, but it did get released on demand, and however, it's still like some type of new movie based on Scooby-Doo that was supposed to get released in theaters. And this sort of shows like another origin story in some way to how Scooby-Doo and the gang of Mystery Inc. first met. It actually was also kind of like a origin for both Shaggy and Scooby and how they met, how their friendship is so strong. And this was supposed to be the first film in a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, because as you note, if you watch the movie, you notice that there were other characters who showed up in the movie that were based on Hanna-Barbera. Like you had Dick Dastardly and his canine partner. You had Captain Caveman, and you had Blue Falcon and Dynomutt again. I mean, they've shown up in a few other movies, but this one they were pretty funny in, especially with, I forgot the name of the actor who was playing Dynomutt, but he was pretty funny. And even Mark Wahlberg as Blue Falcon, well, technically, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, this Blue Falcon was actually not the real Blue Falcon. This was actually Blue Falcon's so-called son, Brian, but it was still voiced by Mark Wahlberg, and I thought it was pretty, he was kind of funny in this movie. I gotta be honest, he was definitely more funny in this movie than he was in a certain live-action movie that came out 6 years ago. But I have to be honest, I think this movie was a good attempt at trying to create a Hanna-Barbera Cinematic Universe. It's just like when they do it with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Extended Universe, all these different types of universes all combined to make one universe of characters. But I have to say, out of these 3 different universes that I just name dropped, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is actually a lot better. Even though we technically didn't get to see any of any MCU properties during the year 2020, hopefully that changes this year, because I will be seeing some of the 4 Marvel movies that are getting released this year. First of which is being Black Widow. Please do not. I hope the studio does not push that release date again, because I'm waiting for theaters to reopen. It's rumored that they're going to open up around March. So if that happens, I will be going back to my job at the theater probably in the next 2 months, which will allow me to see a lot more movies this year, because like I said, a lot of the movies I saw this year were either at home or on a streaming service. Well, I guess that still means I was at home, but still, there were not that many movies that I actually saw in the theaters. And the only reason why some I didn't get to see in theaters is because I didn't get a chance to see them before it was too late. But, like I said, number 5 is Scoob. Yep, that you see it correctly. The live-action version of Mulan is at my number 4. Now, I know this movie has had a lot of supposed controversy, at least not in our country. It has had some controversy in this country that it's based in, which is China. But I thought it was a pretty good attempt at a live-action remake to the Disney animated film, because that's what this is. This is supposed to be a Disney live-action remake to a 1998 film, which was actually released which is the same year I was born, to a Disney animated film called Mulan of the same name. And however, this one changes the story up just a teensy bit, because in the animated version you had Mulan, her mother, father, and her grandmother that was in the movie, and she gave her a supposed lucky cricket, and the movie was a musical. However, this version was not a musical. They switched out the grandmother for a younger sister, and the character of Cricket was actually in the human form, and we unfortunately did not get to see Mushu being a part of this film. However, there were some aspects of the film that were the same, and like I said, the characters of Li Shang, who was the love interest of Mulan, did get his name switched out for another name. However, it seemed, and even the commander, who is supposed to be Li Shang in the animated version, they added a second person who was supposedly the commander, and Li Shang's version in this movie was just another recruit. But we still got other original characters from the movie, besides just the Emperor, and Shifu. I think that was the name of his second-hand man. But we still got Yao, Ping, and Ling, or Chen Po, sorry. Ling, Chen Po, and Yao were still featured in this movie. And like I said, and even though in the original movie she went by the name of Fa Mulan, this movie it was Hua Mulan, which is actually the original name of the person in real time that had the same name. Because it turns out Mulan is a story that actually took place long time ago in ancient history, and they decided to take that concept, that story, and turn it into a movie by Disney. And when that did such a good job, they turned it into a live-action version, and wouldn't you know it, the movie, we still don't, at least I still don't know how good the movie did when it comes to money-wise, because, again, the movie was released on Premier Access on Disney Plus for like $30, which I did pay for that, and I gotta I kind of feel like it was worth the wait a little bit. Or it was worth the amount of money I had to pay to watch it early, because if I didn't purchase it back on September 4th, I would have had to wait all the way until the end of December just to watch it for free, and I didn't want to have to wait that long, so I figured might as well watch it, and it was a pretty good film. Now we're going to get into my top 3 movies of 2020, but before I do, I just want to say, before I go any further with my top 3 films, if you like this video and you want to see like more videos of me ranking certain movies or TV shows, whatever, let me know in the comment section below. And like I said, I do plan on making more like different types of videos this year than what I did last year, because if you notice, last year I barely uploaded any trailer reactions to movies because of the whole situation. However, things might be changing when it comes to this year. I could be reacting to some more trailers for movies or even shows this year. I say shows because I'm talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe shows. Because right now the only 2 shows that are coming out this year for the Marvel Cinematic Universe that haven't gotten trailers are Ms. Marvel and Hawkeye, which are both Disney Plus series based in the MCU. And I have seen the first 3 episodes of WandaVision, which is great, by the way. But I won't be doing my review of the show until probably around the time that Falcon and Winter Soldier airs in March. So you won't see my review of WandaVision until at least the month of March. But anyways, let's get into my top 3 movies of 2020. Yep, at number 3, I have Bad Boys for Life. Now, the reason why this movie is in the top 10 and not Bill and Ted Face the Music, unfortunately, is because unlike Bill and Ted Face the Music, I did decide to go out, buy the movies of Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2 and watch them before I watched Bad Boys for Life, which I had to buy on demand. I did have the first movie on DVD, but I had to get Bad Boys 2 and Bad Boys for Life on demand, which I did. I watched them, and I went to Bad Boys for Life, and I have to admit, Bad Boys for Life actually was a little bit better in quality and story than the first 2 films. And I have to admit, and I think there's even rumors about a 4th movie coming out, and it turns out I think certain people who worked on Bad Boys for Life are also on board to be helping making the MCU Disney Plus series Ms. Marvel, from what I heard. So I'm curious to see how well that show goes, especially with people who are tied to making this movie working on that as well. So yeah, honestly, if I didn't get a chance to see Bad Boys for Life, it wouldn't have been on my list, and Mulan would have been in my number 3 spot if I hadn't seen it. But I did. After I saw the first 2 movies. I still haven't seen Bill and Ted's 1 or Bill and Ted 2, and that's why the 3rd movie was considered to be on one of my honorable mentions. But let's get into my top 2 now. Yep, you knew this movie was making it somewhere on the list. Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, I gotta be honest, if they had kept the original design of Sonic himself, which the movie was gonna be released in 2019 had they kept that design, and it would have been released in the month of August 2019. However, which is actually the same time that I started working at Regal Cinemas. However, they did change the design of Sonic, and it was so much better than the original design, which I think even the original design got turned into a meme, which is insane, but this new design of Sonic was so much better suited for this movie, which was a live-action adaptation of the video game character, and we get Jim Carrey as the famous Dr. Robotnik, or Eggman, as Sonic would call him. I mean, sure, he didn't look like his video game counterpart, that is, until the end of the movie, when we see the first mid-credits scene of him shaving his head and already having grown that bushy mustache and having the goggles and somewhat of a red suit, not the suit that he wears in the games. He'll probably get to that when it comes to the sequel that is going to get released next year in 2022 in April, from what I've been told. So I'm not sure if they're going to start filming it this year. Well, they have to, obviously, but I'm not sure when they're going to start filming Sonic the Hedgehog 2. But and here's the thing that really makes me excited about the sequel and for this first film, and that was the fact that Jim Carrey was not only the villain as Dr. Robotnik, but it was confirmed that he will be returning for the sequel. And if y'all know Jim Carrey, he's not a big fan of when it comes to sequels of projects that he was a part of. I mean, we all saw what happened when he was doing The Mask and Son of the Mask, which I think he was in both of those, and those didn't really turn out very well. And the same thing goes for the Ace Ventura movies. I think there was a sequel for that movie too, and I don't think they did very well, and that's why he was not a big fan of doing sequels for movies. But because of the way he portrayed Dr. Robotnik in this movie, he was actually willing to come back, and he even said he would be willing to wear a fat suit for when he looks like the bigger version of Dr. Robotnik with the bald head, the bushy mustache. And speaking of him wearing a fat suit, it turns out that was actually the case for Chris Hemsworth when it came to Avengers Endgame. Yep, for those of you who didn't know that yet, or most of you probably already knew, but it turns out when I first saw Avengers Endgame, I was in shock when Chris Hemsworth showed up in the movie fat. And I'm like, did he seriously gain all that weight during the filming just to be like that for Avengers Endgame? And it turns out he didn't. He was actually wearing a fat suit, which is what most people would do if they need a person to play a fat character, or play a character who either is fat or became fat in some way. However, one actor in the MCU that isn't going to be fat anymore and is not wearing a fat suit is Jacob Batalon, who plays Ned Leeds in the Spider-Man MCU films, because he will now be skinny as ever in Spider-Man 3, which we still don't know the title for it yet. Man, Marvel is keeping a really tight leash on the stuff for Spider-Man 3. Even though we have gotten supposed leaked set footage and photos from the set of Spider-Man 3, we still haven't gotten the title, and they started filming the movie back in late October. So it's been 3 months now that they've been filming. They spent 3 months filming, and they only have 2 more months to go, and we still don't have the title. I mean, we know it's going to have Home in the title, we just don't know what it's called. Spider-Man Home blank. We don't know what the full title of the movie is. But going back to Sonic, I have to admit, even I never played the games before, and when I saw this movie, I actually thought it was pretty good. I mean, yeah, the guy who voices Sonic from the games didn't come back, but we did get to hear the original voice of the person who voices Tails, because Tails shows up in the second mid-credits scene about trying to warn Sonic about something, or finding him to warn him about something, which is probably going to take place in the sequel. So, but you probably are all wondering what my #1 best film of 2020 is. Well, I did say that back when I did number 6 that there was another Disney Pixar movie that was on this list, and that I thought it was a pretty dang good film. You know where I'm going with this. Yep, you guessed it. Soul was my #1 best film of 2020. In fact, since it clearly is my best animated film of 2020, as well as the best film. Even though the movie did get released to where you can watch it for free as long as you were a Disney Plus subscriber, I don't even care. I got to see the movie somewhat for free, a lot cheaper than, and if I went to see it in theaters, it was that when you think about the monthly subscription for Disney Plus and the price for a ticket, even though I probably would have seen it free anyway, even if I saw it in the theaters, because I was a theater employee, and usually theater employees get their tickets free, but you can only get 2 free tickets a week. So I would have been able to see it for free anyway, and boy was it worth it. Even if I had to see it at home. Soul it's a friggin' masterpiece. I can't believe Pixar was able to pull this off with one of their animated films. I mean, because from what I remember hearing about back in 2007, well actually, no, technically this began in around the 1980s, but Pixar was created as a side studio to Disney, and they created their own animated films. That is until 2007, when Disney and Pixar came to an agreement, and Pixar was bought out by Disney for I think $7 billion, and even some of their movies that they've been releasing after that turned out to be pretty decent. I mean, we got movies like WALL-E, Up, Ratatouille, sequels to Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, a prequel to Monsters, Inc. There were some pretty decent Pixar films after Disney bought Pixar, and now with Pixar being led by one of the original directors of some of those films, like Pete Docter, I'm curious to see what. And the fact that we've already got 4 Disney Pixar films that are original stories that have come out in the past 2 years, 2020 and 2021, that being Onward, Soul, obviously, and now with Luca, and whatever that other film that's getting released this year is, that's based on Pixar. I'm curious to see how this year goes. And, like I said, Soul was a pretty great film, especially with Jamie Foxx voicing the main character. And I can't wait to see how he looks as the new Electro in Spider-Man 3, as I said. But yeah, Soul. You can't think of a better movie last year than Soul. Well, that's it, guys. That I finally showed you my top 10 best films of 2020 with 2 honorable mentions. And like I said, it was a struggle being able to make this list, because I guarantee you, if I had not seen some of these movies that were on this list, like Over the Moon or whatever from Netflix, and movies like I Still Believe, Bad Boys, if I had not seen those films, even if it was just on DVD, I probably would have not been able to create a top 10 list. I probably would have only been able to make like a top 5 with 2 honorable mentions still, and a lot of these movies were not going to be on that list, which means I would have had the same type of list that I did for my worst films, whatever, because unfortunately, if y'all notice, 2019 was the only year that I came up with a top 10 worst movies of 2019. So far, I've only done top best and worst films lists up until 2016. I haven't done 2015 to 2010 yet, but like I said, I'm not going to go that far. I mean, my friend Matthew Davis Media has only done ranking videos as well as reviews for movies up until the year 2014, I believe. So I might try to go past that, but if not, I guess I'll just go to that point like he did. And like I said, the link to his channel will be in the description below if you haven't already subscribed to him. But anyways, that's all for now in this ranking or top things video, and I will see all you dudes in the next video.